Okay, so I just told you that the number one rule of negotiation is before you've gotten the offer, don't reveal what your salary was or what your compensation expectation is. And yet, one of the most common questions I get is, what if I have to share a number? I'm being forced to. So in this video, I want to talk about a couple of the scenarios that you might come across when you feel like you're being forced, and what you should do when you feel like you don't have a choice. So I want to start off with some rebuttals and why I think even if you think you're being forced, you're not actually being forced to overshare or reveal the numbers that you don't want to reveal. So rebuttal number one is, oh, there's a form, and in order to actually even apply for the job, they are making me fill out how much I expect to make. So I would say here, just put some arbitrary number, which is obviously untrue. So if they say, hey, what is your salary expectation? Literally put $1. And that way you can be unblocked in terms of submitting the form, but obviously no one's going to pay you $1. And then that discussion will have to happen with the recruiter or the hiring manager later on about what is your true salary expectation. And you might think, okay, well, if I do that, then I'm for sure going to be rejected from the job. Yeah, that might be true, but I think that the best applicants for a job are oftentimes the people who are able to find alternate pathways into the job. So if your only hope and prayer to get the job is, I want this automated system to accept me and pull my application out of the 1,000 other people who applied, your odds are already quite low. A much better way for you to land the job is for you to submit the application, but also find a second degree connection or maybe a first degree connection who works at the company that you want to work at, and tell them, hey, I just submitted my application. Can you please flag it? Can you give me a referral? So I actually have a much better chance of getting the interview. So then the details like this, the stupid things that you might get rejected for, those become immaterial, as they should be, because you actually have a much more significant weightage on the things like a referral that should matter. Okay, rebuttal number two is to collect data and then share a range. So don't share an exact number of here's what I want to make. Share a range and keep it ambiguous. Ambiguity is your friend here. And then talk about how compensation is just one factor that you are considering when it comes to a new job. So a really powerful thing you can do is to leverage your network. So use online tools, talk to people who have worked at that company before, talk to people on Taro, and figure out what is a good benchmark that you can use. Many states now actually have something called a salary range transparency law. And what that means is it's kind of intended, it's like one step further than the outline of asking people what they made in a prior job. Companies take advantage of employees so much that states are mandating that, hey, you have to publish a salary range with your job offer. So that way people know that they're going to be treated fairly. And so that can actually be quite helpful. So here's an example from Citigroup where they say that the salary range is between 120K and 181,000. That's helpful. It becomes less helpful for other jobs where the company can just basically take advantage of the law and put some wild range between 0 and 2 million. It's not really a range then, right? It's just like every possible number. But this is a good start. So I would recommend finding out other people who have worked at the company and use that as a basis for figuring out a range. If you have the benefit of a salary range on the job posting, obviously use that and put something on the higher end. And then the other takeaway here is don't share a number, share a range, and keep the conversation ambiguous until you get much later on in the process. Okay, and then rebuttal number three is that even if you have to put some made up number in order to interview, I would argue it's still, for the most part, a good use of your time just to interview and get a lot of good practice in. A very common thing is what you'll see here with Patrick in SpongeBob. So when you're doing preparation, when you're doing the job, you have tons of great knowledge and a lot of programming experience. But then when you go into the technical interview, you somehow forget all of it. So you have to really work hard at becoming good at interviews. And so just the fact that you're able to advance to the next stage, even if you put a placeholder in for the number and the compensation expectation, there still is, I would say, value in doing the interview practice and going deeper in the funnel. And once you go deeper in the funnel, you will find that the company is able to bend more and more for you the more they like you. Because the further you go in the interview funnel, clearly the company thinks that you have value you can add to them, and they'll be willing to adjust on things the more they think that you can have that unique value. And the thing to keep in mind is that interviewing is a really repeatable skill. It's very different from engineering on the job, but getting good at that skill will pay dividends for any other interview you do. And that is a recommendation I have, we'll talk about later on, but you should be getting other offers. That's how you get leverage. And so interviewing itself will lead to the higher likelihood of getting more offers. Okay, so with all those rebuttals out of the way, if you actually must give a number, then there's a couple things I would do. First is just look at your historical spend. How much are you paying for rent, healthcare, food, travel? Think about what might change in your life. If you are buying a house, or if you are going to have a kid soon or get a pet, then obviously then you're going to spend a lot more money. Take that number that you anticipate will be your monthly burn, your monthly spend, and then add a 20 or 30% buffer, and don't forget about taxes, and then present that number. So if you really have no idea, then that's how you compute it. But I would argue that in almost every scenario, you should be coming in with some data points about, given my location, how many years of experience I have, what level I'm interviewing for, and the people I've talked to in my network. You should have an okay idea, a decent idea of what is the compensation for the company. And then you can use that also to adjust your estimate up or down. So the takeaway here is that you really shouldn't share a number before you've gotten an offer, but if you absolutely must, then here is how you handle that scenario.